Clara Holbrook's hands trembled as she sealed the letter that would change her life forever. A letter asking a stranger to marry her. Her dead husband's ring finger still showed the pale band where his wedding ring used to be. She'd sold it last week, just to buy feed for the horses. 45 days. That's all she had before the bank took everything Thomas built. Everything she'd bled for. The summer heat pressed down like a punishment. And somewhere across the dusty road, Randolph Crane was watching, waiting. Stay with me until the end of this story, and comment which city you're watching from. I want to see how far Clara's journey has traveled. The ink was still wet when Clara heard footsteps on her porch. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. Her fingers pressed flat against the letter, hiding the words she'd written in desperation. Words no respectable widow should ever write. Mrs. Holbrook? Martha Jenkins stood in the doorway, her face creased with that look Clara had come to dread, pity mixed with curiosity. Martha. Clara folded the letter quickly, tucking it beneath the ledger on her desk. Didn't hear you come up. Brought you some preserves. Fig. Martha set the jar on the table, her eyes scanning the sparse kitchen. You eating proper, Clara? You look thin. I'm fine. You ain't fine. Nobody's fine when they're facing what you're facing. Martha pulled out a chair and sat without being invited. Whole town's talking, you know, about the bank, about Crane. Clara's jaw tightened. Let them talk. They're saying you got 45 days. That true? 44 now. Martha whistled low. Lord have mercy. What are you gonna do? Clara looked at her friend, her only friend really since Thomas died. Martha had been there through the funeral, through the first terrible months, through the whispers and the judgment and the slow grinding poverty that followed. I'm gonna fight, Clara said quietly. Same as I've been doing. Fight with what, Clara, honey? I love you like a sister, but you can't run a horse ranch alone. You just can't. Not in this heat, not with the creek drying up, not with Crane blocking the water upstream. I know. Then what? I wrote a letter. Martha blinked. A letter to who? Clara didn't answer. She pulled the envelope from beneath the ledger and held it up. The address was written in her careful hand. Matrimonial Correspondence Society, Denver, Colorado. Martha's face went pale. Clara Holbrook, you didn't. I did. A mail-order husband. Are you out of your mind? Probably. Martha grabbed the letter from her hand, scanning the address like it might bite her. This is Clara. This is crazy. You don't know what kind of man might answer. Could be a drunk. Could be a criminal. Could be worse. Could be someone willing to work. Clara took the letter back, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her gut. That's all I need, Martha. Someone who can work. Someone who won't run when things get hard. Thomas wouldn't want this. The name hit Clara like a slap. She closed her eyes, fighting the grief that still lived in her chest like a wild thing. Thomas is dead, she said, and her voice cracked on the word. Been dead 18 months. And if I don't do something, everything he built, everything we built, goes to Randolph Crane for pennies on the dollar. You think Thomas would want that? Martha was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and took Clara's hand. I think Thomas would want you to be happy. Happy's a luxury I can't afford. Survival's what I'm after. The mail coach came through twice a week, Tuesdays and Saturdays. Clara waited until Saturday, turning the letter over in her hands 100 times, reading her own words until they stopped making sense. Dear Sir, my name is Clara Holbrook. I am a widow of 33 years, owner of a horse ranch in Stillwater, Texas. I am not seeking romance or affection. I am seeking partnership. The work is brutal, the summer's cruel, and the odds against us. I can offer shelter meals and a share in whatever the land produces. I ask in return for honest labor skill with horses and the willingness to stand when others would run. If you are a drinking man, a gambling man, or a man who raises his hand in anger, do not reply. If you seek easy wealth or soft living, look elsewhere. But if you are tired of drifting and want something to fight for, perhaps we can help each other survive. Respectfully, Clara Holbrook. She'd read it so many times the words had lost their weight. Now standing at the post office counter with Jonas Miller watching her, they felt heavier than ever. Help you, Mrs. Holbrook. Clara set the letter on the counter. Denver. How long? Jonas picked up the envelope, and she watched his eyebrows climb as he read the address. He had the decency not to say anything, but she could see the questions burning in his eyes. Week, maybe less. Return letter another week after that. He stamped the envelope with more force than necessary. That'll be 5 cents. Clara counted out the coins, aware of how few remained in her pocket. Mrs. Holbrook. Jonas lowered his voice. I ain't one to pry, but... Then don't. She took her receipt and walked out into the punishing July heat. The days that followed were the longest of Clara's life. She worked from dawn until her body screamed for rest, then worked some more. The horses needed feeding, the fences needed mending, the garden needed watering, and the water was getting harder to come by every day. Upstream on land, Randolph Crane had bought 3 years ago, a new dam had appeared. Nothing official, nothing legal, just rocks and timber blocking the natural flow of the creek that had watered the Holbrook Ranch for 30 years. Clara had ridden up there twice to confront him. Both times his foreman had turned her away with that smug smile that made her want to scream. Mr. Crane ain't receiving visitors, he'd said. But he did ask me to remind you that his offer still stands. $300 for the property. Fair price considering. Considering what? Considering you ain't got water. Considering you ain't got help. Considering you got 40 days 39 now before the bank comes calling. Clara had ridden away both times without another word, her hands shaking with rage she couldn't afford to show. At night she lay in the bed she'd shared with Thomas and stared at the ceiling, listening to the silence where his breathing used to be. Sometimes she talked to him, telling him about the horses, about the heat, about the letter she'd sent to strangers asking for a husband. I'm sorry, she whispered into the darkness. I didn't know what else to do. Thomas didn't answer. He never did anymore. On the 32nd day, a letter arrived. Clara was in the barn when Martha came running up the path waving an envelope like a white flag. It came, Clara! It came! Clara set down the pitchfork and wiped her hands on her apron, her heart suddenly pounding against her ribs. Let me see. The handwriting was square and careful, the letters formed by someone who'd learned late but practiced hard. The return address said Denver, and beneath it a name, Jesse Callahan. Clara's hands trembled as she opened it. Dear Mrs. Holbrook, my name is Jesse Callahan. I am 37 years old, formerly of Kentucky, though I have spent the last 15 years moving west. I served in the war with an Ohio regiment. I have worked as a soldier, a Texas Ranger, and a horse trainer. I do not drink beyond occasion. I do not gamble. I have never raised my hand to woman or child. I am not a man of means or education. I own nothing but the clothes on my back and whatever skills my hands have learned, but I can work until I drop. I can train horses better than most men living. And I am tired of drifting without purpose. What you described. Hard work, harsh conditions, long odds describes most of my life. I am accustomed to it. I do not seek romance or comfort. I seek a place to stand, and something worth standing for. If you will have me, I will work honestly and to the best of my ability. I ask only for fair treatment and a chance to prove my worth. If these terms are acceptable, send word, and I will come on the next train. Respectfully, Jesse Callahan. Martha was reading over her shoulder. Lord Almighty, a Texas Ranger. Former. Clara read the letter again, searching for lies or warning signs. The tone was direct, almost blunt. No flowery promises, no false charm. Just a plain statement of who he was and what he could do. I seek a place to stand and something worth standing for. Those words hit Clara harder than she expected. She understood that need, the desperate longing for ground that wouldn't shift beneath your feet for a fight that meant something. "What are you gonna do?" Martha asked. Clara reached for pen and paper. Mr. Callahan, your letter was received. Your terms are acceptable. The next train arrives in Stillwater on Saturday, July 18th at 2 o'clock. I will meet you at the station. Bring whatever you have. Expect to work immediately. The situation here is urgent. C. Holbrook, Bartendern. The morning of July 18th. Clara woke before dawn and couldn't go back to sleep. She dressed in her best clothes, a simple blue cotton dress that had once been her church dress, and pinned her hair up with more care than she'd shown in months. She told herself it didn't matter how she looked, that this was a business arrangement, nothing more. But some stubborn part of her refused to meet her future husband, looking like she'd given up. The ride to town took an hour under the blazing summer sun. By the time Clara reached Stillwater, her dress was damp with sweat and dust coated her boots. The town was busy, for a Saturday. Farmers from surrounding ranches had come in to trade, and the saloon was already doing good business despite the early hour. Clara felt eyes on her as she tied her horse near the train station. She knew what they were thinking. There goes the crazy widow, marrying a stranger. Desperate enough to advertise for a husband like he was livestock. Let them think it, them think. Let them talk. She'd weathered worse than wagging tongues. The platform was crowded with people waiting for the train, families, expecting relatives, merchants awaiting shipments, young couples holding hands under the watchful eyes of chaperones. Clara stood apart from them all, her hands clasped tightly, her stomach in knots. What if he didn't come? What if he'd changed his mind? What if he did come, and he was everything she feared? At exactly 2 o'clock, the train's whistle pierced the air. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs as the great iron beast rumbled into the station. Steam hissed. Brakes squealed. Passengers began stepping down onto the platform. A well-dressed family. A traveling salesman with a heavy case. 2 cowboys heading west. An elderly woman clutching a carpet bag. And then she saw him. He was the last to step off the train, and for a moment Clara couldn't breathe. He was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders, and a lean build that spoke of hard years and harder work. His dark hair hung past his collar, and several days of stubble shadowed his jaw. But it was his clothes that made Clara's stomach drop. His coat was more patches than fabric, held together with rough stitching and sheer stubbornness. His trousers were stained and mended at the knees. His boots, Lord, his boots were held together with twine, the soles worn nearly through. He carried a single canvas bag over his shoulder. That was it. Everything he owned in the world. Around her, Clara heard the whispers starting. Good Lord, look at him. That's who she's marrying. Poor woman's lost her mind. Jesse Callahan's dark eyes scanned the platform, wary and watchful, like a man who'd learned not to expect much from the world. When his gaze found hers, he went still. Clara forced herself to step forward. Her legs felt like water, but she moved anyway, closing the distance between them while every eye in Stillwater watched. Mr. Callahan. He removed his hat, a battered thing that had seen better decades, revealing a face weathered by sun and hardship, with a thin scar running through his left eyebrow. Mrs. Holbrook. His voice was low and rough, like stones in a dry creek bed. They stood there, sizing each other up, while the platform buzzed around them. Clara was acutely aware of how she must look to him, a desperate widow in a faded dress gambling everything on a stranger. And he must know how he looked to her, a penniless drifter with nothing to offer but his word and his work. That all you got? Clara nodded at his single bag. Yes, ma'am. Never saw the point in carrying what I'd only have to leave behind. Something about that answer, the quiet acceptance in it, made Clara's chest tighten. I got a wagon outside. Long ride to the ranch. She turned toward the station steps. Hope you're ready to work. We got a fence down and 30 horses that need tending before dark. I'm ready. She was halfway across the platform when a familiar voice stopped her cold. Well, Mrs. Holbrook. Clara turned slowly. Randolph Crane stood at the edge of the platform, his expensive suit immaculate despite the heat, his silver-tipped cane gleaming in the sunlight. Behind him, two of his ranch hands loomed like shadows. Mr. Crane. Clara kept her voice flat. Something you need. Crane's eyes slid past her to Jessie, taking in the patched clothes and worn boots with obvious contempt. I heard you'd sent for a mail-order husband. I confess I didn't believe it. His thin smile didn't reach his eyes. And now I see him. This is your salvation, this vagrant. The word hung in the air like a slap. Clara saw Jessie stiffen, but he didn't speak. Didn't move, just watched with those dark, unreadable eyes. What I do is my business, Clara said. Not yours. Everything in this town is my business, Mrs. Holbrook. I own the bank that holds your mortgage. I own the land that feeds your creek. I own half the businesses on this street. Crane stepped closer, lowering his voice. In 32 days, I'll own your ranch too. Unless you're smart enough to take my offer while it still stands. Your offer is an insult. $300 for a failing property. That's generous considering the circumstances. The circumstances you created. Clara's voice shook with barely contained fury. You damned the creek. You cut off my water. You've been trying to starve me out for 2 years. Prove it. The challenge hung between them. They both knew she couldn't. The dam was on Crane's property, and what a man did on his own land was his own affair. Crane smiled again, that cold reptilian smile that made Clara's skin crawl. 32 days, Mrs. Holbrook. Then this little game ends. He turned to Jessie, looking him up and down like he was inspecting livestock. And you, whatever she's paying you, I'll double it. Come work for me instead. I could use a man who's not too proud to get his hands dirty. Jessie was quiet for a long moment. Then he stepped forward, placing himself between Clara and Crane. The movement was subtle but unmistakable, a shield, a warning. Mrs. Holbrook ain't paying me anything, Jessie said, his voice low and steady. I'm gonna be her husband. And where I come from, a man stands with his wife, not against her. The platform had gone silent. Everyone was watching now. Crane's smile faded. His eyes went hard. You don't know what you're getting into, stranger. This woman is drowning, and she's gonna drag you down with her. Then I'll drown standing up. For a moment, nobody moved. The air between the two men crackled with tension so thick, Clara could taste it. Then Crane stepped back, adjusting his cuffs with deliberate casualness. We'll see, he said softly. 32 days, Mrs. Holbrook. The clock is ticking. He walked away, his cane tapping against the wooden platform, his men following like obedient dogs. Clara let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. You shouldn't have done that, she said quietly, not looking at Jessie. He's dangerous. I know dangerous men. He ain't the worst I've met. He owns half this town. He don't own me. Jessie picked up his bag. And he don't own you. Not yet. Clara finally looked at him. Really looked, and saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Not pity. Not judgment. Just a quiet, steady resolve that reminded her of Thomas in the early days when the ranch was nothing but dreams and hard work. Why? She asked. Why did you answer my letter? Why did you come all this way for a stranger? Jessie was quiet for a moment. Because you told the truth, he said finally. Your letter didn't promise easy living or romance or any of that. You said the work would be hard and the odds would be long. You were honest about what you needed. He shifted his bag on his shoulder. Most people lie, Mrs. Holbrook. They make things sound better than they are, then act surprised when everything falls apart. You didn't do that. You told me exactly what I'd be walking into. And you came anyway. I've been walking for 15 years looking for something worth stopping for. He met her eyes. Maybe I finally found it. Clara didn't know what to say to that. She turned and walked toward the wagon, feeling him fall into step beside her. The whispers followed them across the platform and down the dusty street. Clara heard every word, crazy, desperate, pathetic, and ignored them all. Let them talk. In 32 days, she'd either prove them wrong or lose everything. Either way, she wouldn't do it alone. The wagon ride back to the ranch took nearly an hour, and they spent most of it in silence. Clara kept her eyes on the road, but she could feel Jesse beside her, his body swaying slightly with the wagon's movement. He hadn't complained about the heat, or the dust, or the uncomfortable wooden seat. He just sat there, steady and patient, like a man who'd learned to wait out worse things than discomfort. "That damn crane mentioned," Jesse said finally. "How long's it been blocking your water?" 3 months, maybe 4. You try talking to him about it, Tom, twice. His foreman turned me away both times. Jesse nodded slowly. And the law. Sheriff Henderson plays poker with Crane every Thursday night, takes his whiskey, eats his food. Clara's hands tightened on the reins. I went to him once. He said what happens on a man's own property is his own business. So Crane can kill your ranch slow, and nobody's gonna stop him. That's about the size of it. They rode in silence for another mile. Then Jesse spoke again. How many horses you got? 30. Was 35 last spring, but I had to sell 5 to make the mortgage payment. Good stock. Best in the county. Thomas spent 10 years breeding them. They're worth more than the land if I could find the right buyers. Why can't you? Clara laughed bitterly. Because Crane's been telling everyone from here to Austin that my horses are sick, that I got bad blood in the herd. Nobody wants to buy from a widow with a dying ranch. Jesse turned to look at her, his dark eyes sharp. Are they sick? No. Healthiest horses you'll ever see. But rumors don't need to be true to kill a business. The ranch came into view, and Clara felt the familiar mix of pride and despair that hit her every time she saw it. The main house needed paint. The barn door hung crooked on its hinges. The fences sagged in places where posts had rotted through. But the horses, God, the horses, were beautiful. Even from this distance, she could see them in the east pasture, their coats gleaming in the afternoon sun. Jesse straightened in his seat. Those yours. Every one of them. He was quiet for a moment, studying the herd with an intensity that made Clara's breath catch. They're magnificent, he said softly. Your husband knew what he was doing. Something cracked in Clara's chest. Thomas had loved those horses more than almost anything. Hearing this stranger praise his work, it hurt and healed at the same time. He did, she managed. He surely did. They pulled into the yard and Clara climbed down from the wagon. Her legs ached from the long ride, but there was no time to rest. Never any time to rest. I'll show you where you'll sleep, she said. Then we need to check the north fence. I rode past it yesterday and saw damage. Lead the way. Inside the house, Clara showed him the spare bedroom, small and sparse, just a bed and a washstand and a trunk for his belongings. Jesse set his single bag on the bed and looked around without comment. It ain't much, Clara said. It's more than I had this morning. She watched him unpack his bag. It didn't take long, there wasn't much to unpack. A spare shirt, worn but clean. A razor and a small mirror. A Bible with a cracked leather cover. And a book of poetry, its pages soft with age. That your mother's? Clara asked, nodding at the poetry book. Jesse's hands stilled. How'd you know? Just a guess. Most men don't carry poetry around unless it means something. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, She died when I was 12. This is all I have left of her. Clara understood that kind of loss. The way you held on to small things because the big things were gone forever. I'm sorry, she said. It was a long time ago. He closed the bag and turned to face her. Now, you said something about a fence. They worked until sunset, and then they worked some more. The north fence was worse than Clara had feared. 20 feet of posts had rotted through, and the wire had sagged so low that the horses could step right over it. Jesse assessed the damage with a practiced eye, then set to work without being told what to do. Clara watched him dig post holes in the hard summer ground, his movements efficient and tireless despite the heat. Sweat soaked through his patched shirt, but he didn't slow down, didn't complain, didn't stop for water unless she reminded him. "You don't have to kill yourself the first day," she said, handing him a canteen. "I'm fine." "You're stubborn is what you are." He almost smiled at that. Almost. By the time they finished, full darkness had fallen. Clara's arms ached, and her back screamed in protest, but the fence was solid again. Better than solid, Jesse had reinforced the corners and added an extra line of wire that would keep even the most determined horse contained. "That'll hold," he said, brushing dirt from his hands. "It will." They walked back to the house in comfortable silence. Clara heated leftover stew while Jesse washed up at the pump outside. When he came back in, his hair was wet and his face was clean, and for the first time she saw him clearly. He wasn't handsome in any conventional sense. His face was too weathered, too marked by years of hard living. But there was something about him, a quiet strength, a steady presence that made Clara feel safer than she had in months. "Sit," she said. "Eat." They ate in silence, both too tired for conversation. When they finished, Jesse helped her wash the dishes without being asked. Another point in his favor. "We should talk about the marriage," Clara said, drying her hands on a towel. "We need to do it soon. Legal protection. If the bank comes around, I need to show that I have help." "Tomorrow. If Reverend Brooks is available." Jesse nodded. "I'll be ready." Clara hesitated. There was something she needed to say, something she'd been avoiding since the train station. "Mr. Callahan." "Jesse." "Jesse." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "The marriage, it's a legal necessity, a formality. I don't expect I'm not looking for—" "I understand, ma'am." His voice was gentle. "You need a partner for the work, not the bed. I'm fine with that arrangement." The bluntness should have embarrassed her. Instead, it was a relief. "Thank you," she said, "for understanding. Thank you for being honest about it." He picked up his hat from the table. "I should get some sleep. Morning comes early on a ranch." "It does." He paused at the doorway to his room. "Mrs. Holbrook." "Clara. If we're getting married, you should probably call me Clara." Something shifted in his expression. "Clara. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever happens after, I want you to know I'm not going anywhere. I made you a promise in that letter. I intend to keep it." Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Clara stood alone in the kitchen, listening to the silence, and felt something she hadn't felt in 18 months. Hope. The wedding happened the next morning. Reverend Nathaniel Brooks lived in a small house beside the church, and he answered Clara's knock with obvious surprise. "Mrs. Holbrook, I wasn't expecting." His eyes moved to Jesse, standing silent beside her, and his eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. "I see." "We need you to perform a marriage ceremony," Clara said. "Today. Now, if possible." Brooks ushered them inside, his wife hovering nervously in the kitchen doorway. "Clara, this is rather sudden. You've known this man for 1 day, I know." Clara kept her voice steady. "But I need this done, Reverend, for legal reasons. The bank— I'm aware of your difficulties with the bank." Brooks studied Jesse with the kind of searching look that made most men uncomfortable. Jesse met it without flinching. "You're the one who answered her advertisement," Brooks said. "Jesse Callahan, I presume." "Yes, sir." "And you understand what you're getting into. This ranch is in serious trouble. Mrs. Holbrook is facing foreclosure water shortages, a powerful enemy in Randolph Crane." "I understand." "Then why—" Brooks leaned forward. Why would a man with nothing to his name marry a woman he's never met for a ranch that's likely to fail? Jesse was quiet for a long moment. "Because I'm tired of having nothing," he said finally. "Tired of belonging nowhere. Mrs. Holbrook, Clara offered me a chance to fight for something. That's worth more to me than comfort or safety." Brooke studied him for another long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well. I'll perform the ceremony." They stood before the fireplace in Brooks's small parlor. Clara in her blue dress, Jesse in his best shirt, which was still worn and faded, but clean. "Mrs. Tess," Brooks served as witness, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "Do you, Clara Ann Holbrook, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Clara looked at Jesse. His dark eyes met hers, steady and calm. "I do." "Do you, Jesse James Callahan, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Jesse leaned forward and pressed a brief chaste kiss to Clara's cheek. Respectful, appropriate, exactly what their arrangement called for. But Clara felt something flutter in her chest anyway. They signed the register, paid the Reverend $2 Clara could barely afford, and walked back out into the summer heat. "Well," Clara said, "I suppose that makes it official." "I suppose it does." She looked at the simple ring on her finger, a band of twisted wire that Jesse had made the night before from materials in the barn. It was crude, clearly handmade, but it fit perfectly. "We should get back," she said. "There's work to do." "There always is." The first week was brutal. Clara and Jesse fell into a rhythm that left no room for anything but work. Up before dawn. Feed the horses. Check the fences. Haul water from the rapidly shrinking creek. Mend what was broken. Plan for what might break next. Jesse worked like a man possessed. Every task Clara gave him, he completed faster and better than she expected. And with the horses, God with the horses, he was something else entirely. She found him in the corral on the third day working with a young stallion that had been giving her trouble for months. The horse was wild-eyed and skittish, prone to biting and kicking, impossible to saddle. But Jesse stood in the middle of the corral, hands at his sides, voice low and steady. And the stallion watched him with something that looked almost like respect. "Easy now," Jesse murmured. "Easy. Ain't nobody gonna hurt you." The stallion snorted and pawed the ground. I know. You're scared. Been hurt before probably. Men been cruel to you." Jesse took one slow step forward. "But that's done now. You hear me? That's done." Another step, then another. The stallion's ears flicked forward. Jesse reached out slow and careful and laid his hand on the horse's neck. The animal trembled but didn't pull away. "There you go," Jesse said softly. "There you go. Good boy. Good boy." Clara watched from the fence, her heart in her throat. In 10 minutes, Jesse had accomplished what she'd been trying to do for 6 months. "How'd you do that?" she asked when he finally climbed over the fence to join her. "Just patience, and knowing what they're feeling. You talk to them like they understand you. They do understand. Not the words maybe, but the feeling behind them." He wiped sweat from his forehead. "Horses know when you're scared, when you're angry, when you're trying to hurt them, and they know when you're just trying to help." Clara thought about that. Thomas used to say something similar. Said horses could read a man's soul. Your husband was a smart man. He was. Clara paused. He would have liked you, I think. Jesse didn't respond to that, but something in his expression softened. On the 5th day, the well ran dry. Clara was drawing water for the horses when the bucket came up with nothing but mud. She lowered it again. Same result. And again. Nothing. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She ran to the creek, or what was left of it. The water had dropped another foot overnight. In some places, she could see the rocky bottom. "Clara!" Jesse came running from the barn, drawn by her shout. "The well's dry," Clara said, her voice shaking. "And the creek, look at it. There's barely enough to fill a bucket." Jesse studied the water level, his face grim. "Crane's Dam," he said. "He must have blocked more of the flow. We can't survive without water. The horses—" "I know." Clara pressed her hands to her face, fighting the urge to scream. 26 days until the bank payment was due. 26 days, and now they had no water. "We have to confront him," she said. "We have to make him what he's got the law on his side. Sheriff Henderson won't help. The only way to stop him is to tear down that dam ourselves." "That's trespassing. I know what it is." Jesse's jaw was tight. "But what's the alternative? Watch your horses die of thirst. Let Crane win." Clara looked at him. This man she'd known for 5 days. This stranger who'd become her husband, and saw something in his eyes that matched the fire burning in her own chest. "Tonight," she said. "We go tonight." They waited until the moon was high and the town was sleeping. Clara and Jesse rode out to Crane's land, moving slow and quiet through the darkness. The dam was about 2 miles upstream, built across a narrow point where the creek passed between 2 rocky hills. When they reached it, Clara's breath caught in her throat. It was bigger than she'd imagined. Logs and rocks and packed earth blocking the water completely. Behind it, a small lake had formed stolen water that should have been flowing down to her ranch. "Son of a bitch," Jesse muttered. "This ain't just blocking the flow. He's storing it, building his own reservoir. Can we take it down?" "Not all of it. But if we move enough of the logs—" He was already dismounting. "Keep watch. This won't take long." Clara held the horses while Jesse waded into the shallow water and began pulling at the dam's structure. The logs were heavy, wedged tight, but he worked with a desperate energy that made her heart pound. "Hurry," she whispered. "Jesse, hurry." The first log came free. Then another. Water began trickling through the gap, then flowing faster as Jesse pulled more debris away. "Jesse! Almost there!" A gunshot split the night. Clara's horse reared, nearly pulling the reins from her hands. Jesse dove behind the dam as another shot rang out, kicking up dirt near his feet. "Who's there?" A voice from the darkness. "This is private property." "Go!" Jesse shouted at Clara. "Get out of here. I'm not leaving you. Go, damn it!" Another shot. Clara saw the muzzle flash from a ridge above them. She grabbed her rifle from the saddle and fired back, not aiming to hit, just to provide cover. Jesse scrambled up the bank and threw himself onto his horse. They kicked into a gallop, racing through the darkness while shots cracked behind them. They didn't stop until they reached the ranch. Clara's hands were shaking as she dismounted. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "Did you see who it was?" she gasped. "Crane's men. 2 of them, maybe 3. Jesse's face was grim. "They'll report to him. He'll know it was us. Then we're not dead. Not yet." Jesse grabbed her shoulders, steadying her. "Listen to me. We got some of the dam down. Water's flowing again. Maybe not much, but enough to keep the horses alive another week. And then what? Then we figure out our next move." Clara looked at him in the moonlight. This man who'd just risked his life for her ranch, her horses, her impossible dream, and felt something break open in her chest. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded. "Why are you fighting so hard for a place you don't even own, for a woman you barely know?" Jesse was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because you're worth fighting for." Before she could respond, they heard hoofbeats approaching. "Inside," Jesse said. "Now." They barely made it through the door before riders appeared at the edge of the property. 3 men on horseback, their faces hidden in shadow. "Holbrook," one of them shouted. "We know you're in there. Mr. Crane wants a word." Clara reached for her rifle, but Jesse stopped her. "Wait." "They're going to—" "Wait." The riders circled the house once, twice. Clara could hear them laughing, talking among themselves. Then one of them raised something in his hand and threw it. The window shattered. A rock landed on the kitchen floor, a piece of paper tied around it. The riders galloped away into the darkness. Clara picked up the rock with trembling hands and unfolded the paper. Last warning. Sell now or face the consequences. You have 3 days. Jesse took the note from her and read it. His expression didn't change, but Clara saw his jaw tighten. 3 days, he said quietly. What do we do? He crumpled the note in his fist. We fight. The next morning, Clara rode into town alone. She needed supplies, food, ammunition, medicine for the horses. But more than that, she needed to see if anyone would still do business with her after last night. The answer came quickly. At the general store, Martin Palmer shook his head before she even opened her mouth. Can't help you, Mrs. Ward. I'm sorry. I have money. I can pay. It ain't about money. Palmer lowered his voice. Crane came by this morning. Made it real clear what happens to anyone who helps you. I got a wife, Mrs. Ward. I got children. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. He threatened you. Didn't have to. We all know what he's capable of. Palmer wouldn't meet her eyes. You should take his offer, ma'am. Sell the ranch and get out while you still can. Clara walked out without another word. At the feed store, same story. At the blacksmith, same story. Even at the church, Reverend Brooks seemed nervous, his wife hovering in the doorway like she expected trouble. I want to help you, Clara, Brooks said. But Crane has influence everywhere. The bank, the sheriff, half the businesses in town, they all answer to him. Then no one's going to help me. I didn't say that. Brooks glanced around, then pressed something into her hand. There's a man named Billy Crane, Randolph's son. He works at his father's ranch, but he don't agree with what his father's doing. If anyone might help you, it's him. Clara looked at the slip of paper. An address. A name. Why would Randolph Crane's own son help me? Because Billy's not his father. Not yet, anyway. Brooks squeezed her hand. Be careful, Clara. You're playing a dangerous game. She found Billy Crane at the saloon that afternoon. He was younger than she expected, maybe 24, with his father's dark hair, but none of his coldness. He sat alone at a corner table nursing a whiskey like it was the only friend he had. Clara approached carefully. Mr. Crane. He looked up, and she saw recognition flash in his eyes. Mrs. Holbrook. Or Ward, I guess now. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. Sit. I've been wondering when you'd come. You know why I'm here? I can guess. Billy took a long drink. My father's trying to destroy you. You want to know if there's anything I can do about it. Is there? He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is a copy of my father's correspondence with some investors from Austin. They're planning to buy up every ranch in this county, including yours. He slid the paper across the table. There's a railroad coming through. Anyone who owns land along the route is going to be rich. My father's been blocking your water, spreading lies about your horses, doing everything he can to drive you out before the news becomes public. Clara's hands shook as she unfolded the paper. The words blurred before her eyes. Why are you showing me this? Billy's expression hardened. Because what my father's doing is wrong. And because, he paused, because my sister's dying. Cancer. We need money for her treatment, and my father says this land deal is the only way to get it. But I won't let him destroy innocent people to save her. She wouldn't want that. And neither do I. Clara stared at him. I don't understand. Your father is a monster. My father is a desperate man doing terrible things. Billy met her eyes. That don't make it right. But it explains it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Clara said, What do you want from me? Nothing. Just don't let him win. Billy stood, dropping coins on the table. There's a town meeting next week. If you can survive until then, if you can show people what he's really doing, maybe, just maybe, you've got a chance. He walked out without looking back. Clara sat alone, staring at the paper in her hands. A railroad. land worth fortunes, a dying girl, a monster father. Everything she thought she knew had just shifted beneath her feet. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a clock was ticking. 24 days until the bank came calling. 24 days to save everything. She folded the paper carefully and tucked it into her dress. Then she went home to tell Jesse. Jesse read the paper twice without speaking. Clara watched his face, searching for some reaction, but he gave nothing away. Just those dark eyes moving across the words, taking in every detail. "A railroad," he said finally. "Worth millions according to Billy. Anyone who owns land along the route gets rich." Jesse set the paper down. "And Crane wants all of it. He's been planning this for years. The rumors about my horses, the pressure on the bank, it's all connected. He needs me gone before the announcement." When? Billy didn't know exactly. Soon. Maybe weeks, maybe months. Jesse was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "This changes things." "How?" "Before, Crane was just a greedy man trying to steal your land. Now he's a desperate man with a dying daughter and a fortune on the line." Jesse met her eyes. "Desperate men do desperate things, Clara. He's not going to stop at threats and broken windows." Clara felt a chill run through her, despite the summer heat. "What do? We prepare, we watch, and we don't let them catch us off guard again." They spent the next 3 days fortifying the ranch. Jesse rigged warning bells along the fence lines, strung tripwires near the barn, taught Clara how to shoot from positions she'd never considered before. They took turns keeping watch at night, sleeping in shifts, never letting the property go unguarded. The water situation improved slightly. Whatever damage they'd done to Crane's dam had let enough flow through to keep the horses alive, though barely. Every morning, Clara walked the creek bed, measuring the water level, praying it wouldn't drop further. On the 4th night, her prayers ran out. She was on watch when she smelled it. Smoke, faint at first, carried on the night wind, but growing stronger by the second. "Jesse!" He was out the door before she finished calling his name, rifle in hand, eyes scanning the darkness. "There." Clara pointed east. An orange glow flickered on the horizon, growing brighter. "The east pasture. That's where—" "The horses." They ran. The fire had started near the fence line, spreading fast through the dry summer grass. Clara could hear the horses screaming before she saw them, their terrified cries cutting through the roar of the flames. "The gate!" Jesse shouted. "Get the gate open!" Clara sprinted for the pasture gate, her lungs burning, her eyes streaming from the smoke. The horses were running blind, crashing into each other, into the fence, trapped by their own panic. She threw the gate open and pressed herself against the post as the herd stampeded past. 1, 5, 10, 15, she counted them as they fled, praying she'd see all 30. Jesse! He was in the middle of the inferno, a rope in his hand, trying to reach the horses that had gotten separated from the herd. 3 of them, including the young stallion he'd been training, were trapped near the burning fence, too scared to find their way out. "Get back!" Clara screamed. "The fence is coming down!" Jesse didn't listen. He caught the stallion's halter and pulled, dragging the terrified animal toward the gate. The other 2 followed, their instincts finally kicking in. They were almost clear when the burning fence post gave way. Clara saw it happen like it was moving underwater. The post fell. The wire snapped. A tangle of burning wood and metal crashed down, and Jesse went down with it. Jesse. She reached him in seconds, pulling at the debris with her bare hands, ignoring the pain as the hot metal seared her skin. He was conscious, trying to push himself up, but his left leg was pinned beneath a charred beam. "Clara, get the horses out." "Shut up." She heaved at the beam with everything she had. It moved an inch, 2 inches, enough for Jesse to drag himself free. "Can you walk?" "Gonna have to." She got under his arm, taking as much of his weight as she could, and they staggered toward safety. Behind them, the fire roared on, consuming everything in its path. They made it to the well and collapsed against the stone wall, gasping for air. Clara's hands were bleeding, her lungs felt like they'd been scraped raw, and Jesse's face was gray with pain. "The horses," he managed. "Did they all? I don't know. I don't know." She left him at the well and ran back toward the pasture, her heart pounding against her ribs. The fire had burned itself out against the rocky ground on the far side, leaving a smoking wasteland where the east pasture used to be. Clara counted horses in the moonlight. 25. 26. 27. 28. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She found the bodies near the fence line. 2 horses, their coats still smoking, their eyes open and empty. They'd been trapped by the fire, unable to escape. Clara fell to her knees beside them and wept. She didn't know how long she stayed there. Minutes, hours. Time had lost all meaning. All she could see were the horses she'd failed, the animals Thomas had loved, the proof that she couldn't protect anything, couldn't save anyone, couldn't. Clara. Jesse's voice cut through the darkness. She looked up and saw him limping toward her, using a broken fence post as a crutch. "You should be resting," she said, her voice raw. "So should you." He lowered himself to the ground beside her, wincing as his injured leg bent beneath him. "This wasn't your fault. 2 horses dead, 2 of Thomas's horses. 2 out of 30. 28 survived because you got that gate open fast enough." Jesse's hand found hers in the darkness. "You saved them, Clara. Most of them. It's not enough. It's never enough. That's just life." His fingers tightened around hers. "But you don't stop fighting because you lost a battle. You grieve, you heal, and you keep going." Clara turned to look at him. In the dim light, she could see the burn marks on his arms, the pain etched into his face, the exhaustion that mirrored her own. "Why did you go back in?" she asked. "You could have died. Those horses needed help. You don't owe them anything. You don't owe me anything." Jesse was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "When I was 17, I watched my whole company get wiped out at Antietam. 50 men, friends, brothers gone in an afternoon. I survived because I ran, because I was faster than the men beside me." His voice was steady, but Clara could hear the old pain beneath it. "I spent 15 years running after that. Every time things got hard, every time people needed me, I ran. Told myself it was smart. Told myself it was survival." He paused. "But I was just scared. Scared of losing. Scared of caring. Scared of staying somewhere long enough to watch it burn. And now I'm tired of running." He turned to face her, and in his eyes, she saw something that made her breath catch. "Those horses needed help. You needed help. And for once in my miserable life, I stayed. I fought. Even if we lose everything, at least I'll know I tried." Clara didn't think. She just moved. She kissed him. It wasn't gentle or careful or appropriate. It was desperate and fierce, and full of everything she'd been holding back since the day he stepped off that train. Jesse's arms came around her, pulling her close, and for one perfect moment, the fire and the loss and the fear all disappeared. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "Clara." "Don't." She pressed a finger to his lips. "Don't say we shouldn't. Don't say it's too soon. I'm so tired of being careful, Jesse. I'm so tired of holding back." "I wasn't going to say any of that." His voice was rough. "I was going to say I love you." The words hit her like a physical force. She stared at him, searching for doubt or hesitation, and found none. "You barely know me. I know you're brave. I know you're stubborn. I know you'd rather die than give up on something you believe in." He touched her face, his calloused fingers gentle against her cheek. "I've known a lot of people in my life, Clara. Most of them weren't worth knowing. But you're worth everything." Clara felt tears streaming down her face. Happy tears this time, the first she'd cried in years. "I love you too," she whispered. "God help me. I love you too." They held each other in the darkness, while the last embers of the fire died around them. Two broken people, finding something whole in each other. But morning brought reality crashing back. Jesse's leg was badly injured. Not broken, thank God, but the burn was deep and already showing signs of infection. Clara cleaned and wrapped it as best she could, but they both knew he needed real medical attention. "I'll ride into town," Clara said. "Get Doc Morrison to come out." "Doc Morrison works for Crane. Everybody works for Crane." "Then what do we do?" "I know someone." Jesse's jaw was tight with pain. "Rosa Delgado. She lives on the edge of town in the Mexican Quarter. She's a healer, knows herbs and medicines better than any doctor I've met. Treated my unit during the war." "You trust her?" "With my life." Clara found Rosa that afternoon, a small woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and gentle hands. She took one look at Jesse's leg and clicked her tongue. "You're lucky you still got this leg, mister. Another day, and you'd be talking to the bone saw." "Can you help him?" Clara asked. "I can try, but he needs rest. Real rest. No working, no walking, no heroics." Rosa looked at Clara. "Can you keep him down?" "I'll tie him to the bed if I have to." Rosa smiled. "I like you. You got fire." She worked on Jesse for 2 hours, cleaning the wound, applying poultices, making him drink bitter teas that had him grimacing with every swallow. By the time she finished, Jesse was unconscious, his face finally peaceful in sleep. "He'll live," Rosa said, wiping her hands. "But you gotta keep that wound clean. Change the bandages twice a day, make him drink the tea even when he complains, and for God's sake don't let him do anything stupid." "Thank you." Clara pressed money into Rosa's hands. "I don't know how to repay you." "You don't gotta repay me." Rosa's expression turned serious. "I heard what Crane's been doing to you. The whole Mexican Quarter's heard. We know what it's like when powerful men decide to take what's yours. Everyone keeps telling me to give up, to sell and get out." "That what you gonna do?" Clara thought about the fire, about the dead horses, about Jesse lying wounded in the next room. "No," she said. "I'm gonna fight until there's nothing left to fight for." Rosa nodded slowly. "Good. Then you should know Crane's planning something. Something big. My nephew works at his ranch, hears things. They're talking about the town meeting next week, saying Crane's gonna make his move then in front of everybody." "What kind of move?" "Don't know exactly. But whatever it is, you better be ready." Clara was still processing this when she heard hoofbeats outside. She grabbed her rifle and ran to the window. 3 riders were coming up the path, and even from a distance, she recognized the lead horse, Randolph Crane. "Stay inside," Clara told Rosa. "Watch Jesse." She stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, and waited. Crane stopped his horse a few feet from the steps. His expensive suit was immaculate, despite the summer heat, and his silver-tipped cane gleamed in the sunlight. "Mrs. Ward," he said, his voice pleasant. "I heard about your fire. Terrible tragedy." "Cut the act, Crane. We both know you said it." His smile didn't waver. "That's a serious accusation. I hope you have proof." "I don't need proof to know what you are. What I am is a businessman." Crane dismounted, moving toward her with slow, deliberate steps. "A businessman who's trying to offer you a fair deal. But you keep refusing, keep fighting, keep making this harder than it needs to be. Maybe because I don't like being bullied off my own land." "Your land?" Crane laughed. "Mrs. Ward, in 19 days, this won't be your land anymore. The bank will foreclose, and I'll buy it at auction for a fraction of what I'm offering you now. So really, you're only hurting yourself by refusing." "Then why do you keep coming? If you're so sure you're gonna win, why bother threatening me?" Something flickered in Crane's eyes. Just for a moment, Clara saw something beneath the polished surface. Fear. Desperation. "Because I'm not a patient man, Mrs. Ward. And because—" He stopped, looked away. "Because my daughter doesn't have 19 days. Clara stared at him. Billy told me about Emily. Crane's head snapped back toward her. My son talks too much. He told me she's dying, that you need money for her treatment. And what of it? Does that change anything? Does her suffering make mine more acceptable? It explains it. Crane was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, almost human. Emily is 17 years old. She has her mother's eyes, her mother's laugh, her mother's kindness. And in 6 months, maybe less, she'll be dead. Unless I can get her to a specialist in Philadelphia, unless I can pay for treatments that cost more than most people earn in a lifetime. He looked at Clara, and for the first time she saw the man beneath the monster. I'm not a good man, Mrs. Ward, I know that. I've done terrible things, and I'll probably do worse before this is over. But I love my daughter, and I will burn down the world to save her if I have to. Clara thought about Thomas, about what she would have done, what she would have sacrificed to save him. I understand, she said quietly, but I can't help you by destroying myself. Then we're at an impasse. Seems like. Crane studied her for a long moment. Then he mounted his horse and gathered the reins. The town meeting is in 6 days, he said. I'm going to present evidence that your ranch is in violation of county health codes. Your horses are diseased, your property is a danger to the community, and the bank should accelerate foreclosure proceedings. By this time next week, you'll have nothing left. That's a lie and you know it. Doesn't matter if it's true, Mrs. Ward. Only matters if people believe it. He tipped his hat. Good day. Clara watched him ride away, her hands shaking with fury and fear. 6 days. She had 6 days to find a way to stop him. She turned and went back inside to plan. Jesse was awake when she reached his bedside, his face pale, but his eyes alert. Heard everything, he said. Rosa helped me to the window. Then you know how bad it is. I know. He reached for her hand. But I also know we're not beat yet. Jesse, he's going to lie to the whole town. He's going to make them believe our horses are sick, that we're dangerous. Then we prove him wrong. Jesse pushed himself up, ignoring her protests. We bring our horses to that meeting. We show everyone they're healthy. We expose his lies in front of the whole county. How we can't just parade 30 horses through town. Not 30, just one. Jesse's eyes were fierce despite his pain. That stallion I've been training, the one that was wild when I got here. If I can show them what he can do, if I can demonstrate that your horses are the best in Texas, Crane's lies won't stand. Clara hesitated. You can barely walk. I'll manage. Jesse. Clara. He grabbed her hand, his grip strong despite everything. You didn't give up when the bank threatened to take everything. You didn't give up when Crane cut off your water. You didn't give up when they burned your pasture. Don't give up now, not when we're this close. Clara looked at this man, her husband, her partner, her love, and felt something shift inside her. Not doubt, not fear. Something stronger, hope. All right, she said. We fight. The 6 days before the town meeting passed in a blur of preparation and prayer. Jesse worked with the stallion every morning despite Clara's protests, despite the pain that still showed in his face every time he put weight on his injured leg. Rosa came by twice to check on him, clicking her tongue at his stubbornness, but grudgingly admitting the wound was healing. You're gonna kill yourself before Crane gets the chance, she told him. Maybe, but I'm gonna do it on my feet. Clara divided her time between helping Jesse and gathering evidence. She rode to every ranch in the county, talking to anyone who'd bought horses from her over the years, collecting testimonies about the quality of her stock. Some people slammed doors in her face. Others wouldn't even come to the door. But a few, enough, agreed to speak at the meeting. Your horses saved my cattle operation, Old Man Peterson told her, signing his name to a written statement. I'll stand up and say so no matter what Crane threatens. Thank you, Clara said, her voice thick with emotion. I won't forget this. Don't thank me yet. Crane's got half the county in his pocket. A few honest folks speaking up might not be enough. But Clara had to believe it would be. Had to believe that truth still meant something even against a man with money and power on his side. 3 days before the meeting, Billy Crane came to the ranch. Clara saw him coming from a distance and reached for her rifle before recognizing the rider. She met him at the gate, her expression guarded. "What do you want?" "To help." Billy dismounted and held up his hands. "I know you got no reason to trust me, but I got information you need." "Information about what?" "About what my father's really planning." Billy glanced over his shoulder like he expected to see someone following him. "Can we talk inside? This ain't a conversation for open air." Clara led him into the kitchen where Jesse was sitting at the table cleaning his rifle. He didn't get up when Billy entered, just watched with those dark, calculating eyes. "Say what you came to say," Jesse said. Billy pulled a bundle of papers from his coat and spread them on the table. "These are the real documents about the railroad, the ones my father's been hiding. The route's been finalized, it's coming right through your property, Mrs. Ward, through the east pasture specifically." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. "The east pasture, where the fire was." "That wasn't no accident. My father set that fire to destroy the land, make it worthless. He figured if the pasture was burned out, you'd have no choice but to sell. Then he'd own the whole corridor when the railroad announcement comes." "Son of a bitch," Jesse muttered. "There's more." Billy pointed to another document. "My father's been paying Sheriff Henderson to look the other way, and he's bribed 2 members of the county health board to declare your horses diseased at the town meeting. The whole thing's rigged." Clara stared at the papers, her mind racing. "If we show these at the meeting, it's your word against my father's. He'll say I forged them. He'll say you stole them. Without corroboration, nobody's gonna believe it." "Then why bring them to us?" Billy was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because my sister asked me to. Emily. She found out what our father's been doing. The fire, the threats, all of it. She was furious." Billy's voice cracked. "She told me that even if she dies, she doesn't want it to be because our father destroyed an innocent woman. She said she'd rather die poor and honest than live as a monster's daughter." Clara thought about this girl she'd never met, 17 years old, facing death and still trying to do the right thing. Her heart ached in a way she hadn't expected. "How sick is she?" Clara asked softly. "The doctors give her 6 months, maybe less." Billy wiped his eyes roughly. "The treatment in Philadelphia might save her, might not. But my father's willing to ruin lives for a chance at that money, and I can't be part of it anymore." Jesse spoke up. "What do you want from us?" "I want to testify, at the meeting. I'll stand up in front of the whole town and tell them what my father's done." Billy met Clara's eyes. "I can't give you back what he's taken, but I can give you the truth." Clara reached across the table and took his hand. "That's more than enough." The night before the meeting, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet sounds of the ranch, the horses shifting in the barn, the wind moving through the trees, Jesse's steady breathing beside her. He'd moved into her room after the fire, and she'd let him stay. Some things didn't need to be discussed. "You awake?" Jesse's voice came through the darkness. "Yeah." "Nervous?" "Terrified." He rolled toward her, his hand finding hers under the blankets. "We're ready, Clara. We've got the evidence, the testimonies, Billy's cooperation. Whatever happens tomorrow, we're not going in blind." "What if it's not enough? What if Crane buys off the whole town? What if—" "Then we'll figure out something else." Jessie squeezed her hand. "I didn't come all this way to give up now, and neither did you." Clara turned to face him, studying his profile in the faint moonlight. This man who'd been a stranger 6 weeks ago. This man who'd become her partner, her lover, her reason to keep fighting. "Jesse." "Yeah." "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know I don't regret it. Any of it. The letter, the marriage, you. You're the best thing that's happened to me since Thomas died." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I spent 15 years believing I didn't deserve anything good. Believing I was damaged, broken, better off alone. You changed that. You made me believe I could be worth something. You are worth something. You're worth everything." He kissed her then slow and tender, and Clara let herself forget about tomorrow. Just for a little while. The morning of the town meeting arrived hot and bright. Clara dressed in her best clothes, the blue dress freshly washed and pressed. Jesse wore his cleanest shirt, the burn scars on his arms mostly hidden by the long sleeves. They loaded the stallion into the wagon, along with all their evidence, and headed into town. The church was already crowded when they arrived. It seemed like half the county had turned out, drawn by rumors of a showdown between the widow Ward and Randolph Crane. Clara saw familiar faces in the crowd, some friendly, some hostile, most just curious. Crane sat in the front row, flanked by his men and a handful of county officials. He looked calm, confident, like a man who knew exactly how this was going to end. When he saw Clara enter, he smiled that cold, reptilian smile. "Mrs. Ward, so glad you could join us. Wouldn't miss it." She took her seat across the aisle, Jesse beside her, and waited for the meeting to begin. Mayor Harrison called the gathering to order, his voice thin and nervous. He was a small man who'd held the position for 20 years by never making anyone angry. Today that strategy was about to fail. "We're here to discuss concerns raised about the Holbrook, the Ward Ranch," Harrison said, reading from notes. "Mr. Crane, you have the floor." Crane rose with practiced ease, buttoning his jacket as he turned to face the crowd. "Thank you, Mayor. Friends, neighbors, I come before you today, not as an enemy, but as a concerned citizen." His voice was smooth, persuasive. "For months, I've watched with growing alarm as conditions at the Ward Ranch have deteriorated. The property has become a danger to our community, diseased livestock, unsafe structures, a breeding ground for fire and pestilence." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Clara felt her hands clench into fists. "I've consulted with county health officials who have confirmed my concerns." Crane gestured to two men in the front row who nodded solemnly. "The horses on that ranch are sick. They pose a risk to every herd in the region. In the interest of public safety, I move that we recommend immediate foreclosure and quarantine of the property." The murmurs grew louder. Clara saw doubt on faces that had been sympathetic just moments ago. Crane's performance was masterful, reasonable, concerned, utterly convincing. "Mrs. Ward," the mayor said, "do you wish to respond?" Clara stood, her heart pounding. Every eye in the room turned toward her. "Mayor Harrison, Mr. Crane is lying." Gasps, whispers. Crane's smile never wavered. "Those are serious words, Mrs. Ward. They're true words." Clara pulled out her stack of testimonies. "I have here signed statements from 12 ranchers who've purchased horses from my property. Not one of them has reported disease. Not one has seen anything but healthy, quality stock." She handed the papers to the mayor, who looked at them like they might bite him. "Furthermore," Clara continued, "I have brought one of my horses here today, a young stallion as healthy as any animal in this county. I invite anyone present to examine him and confirm that Mr. Crane's accusations are false." Crane's smile flickered, just slightly. "Mrs. Ward, testimonies can be bought. A single horse proves nothing." "Then let's see your evidence." Clara stepped toward him. "You claim my horses are diseased. Show us the proof. Show us the veterinary reports, the examination records, anything that backs up your accusations." Crane's eyes narrowed. "I have statements from county health officials. Officials who've been paid to lie." The crowd erupted. People shouted questions, accusations, demands for proof. Mayor Harrison banged his gavel uselessly, trying to restore order. In the chaos, Clara saw Billy Crane rise from his seat. "I have something to say." The room fell silent. Everyone stared at Randolph Crane's own son, standing in the middle of the crowd, with his hands shaking and his face pale. "Billy." Crane's voice was sharp. "Sit down." "No, father, not this time." Billy turned to face the crowd. "Everything Mrs. Ward said is true. My father has been lying to you, all of you, for years." Crane's face went white. "Billy, I'm warning you. He dammed the creek on purpose to cut off her water supply. He set the fire that burned her east pasture. He bribed Sheriff Henderson to ignore his crimes. Billy's voice grew stronger with every word. And he did it because there's a railroad coming through this county and he wants to own every inch of land along the route. The crowd exploded again. This time the anger was directed at Crane. People shouted pointed, demanded answers. Crane's carefully constructed facade was crumbling before their eyes. "This is ridiculous," Crane shouted, trying to regain control. "My son is confused. He's been manipulated by this woman." "I've seen the documents, Father, the real ones." Billy pulled a folder from his coat. "Railroad surveys, bribery records, correspondence with Austin investors. It's all here. Everything you've been hiding." Crane lunged for the papers, but Sheriff Henderson stepped between them, and for once, he wasn't on Crane's side. "I think we need to have a look at those documents, Randolph." "Tom, you work for me. I worked for you." Henderson's face was hard. "But I draw the line at burning down a woman's ranch and threatening her life. That ain't law enforcement, that's murder." Crane stood alone in the middle of the church, his allies deserting him one by one. For the first time since Clara had known him, he looked truly afraid. Then his expression changed, hardened, became something dangerous. "You want the truth?" His voice was quiet, but it carried. "Fine, I'll give you the truth." He reached into his coat and pulled out a gun. Screams erupted. People dove for cover. Jesse moved faster than Clara thought possible, throwing himself in front of her as Crane leveled the weapon. "Nobody move!" Crane shouted. "Nobody moves or I start shooting!" The church went silent. Clara could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. "Father, please!" Billy started forward. "Stay back!" Crane swung the gun toward his son. "You betrayed me. Your own father. After everything I've done for you for Emily." "This isn't about Emily anymore." Billy's voice was steady despite the gun pointed at his chest. "This is about you. About the monster you've become." "I'm not a monster. I'm a father trying to save his daughter. By destroying innocent people. By burning down homes and threatening lives." Billy shook his head. "Emily would rather die than be saved like this. She told me herself." Something broke in Crane's face. The gun wavered. "She said that... She's ashamed of you, Father. We both are." For a long moment, nobody moved. Clara held her breath, watching the war play out on Crane's face. Love and desperation and grief all battling for control. Then Jesse spoke. "Mr. Crane?" The gun swung toward him. Jesse stood his ground. "I know what it's like to be desperate. I know what it's like to feel like you're losing everything that matters. I've been there. I've done things I ain't proud of." Jesse's voice was calm, steady. "But this ain't the way. Killing people won't save your daughter. It'll just destroy what's left of your family." "What would you know about family?" "Nothing, not until I came here." Jesse glanced at Clara. "But I'm learning. And what I've learned is that family ain't worth anything if you have to become a monster to keep it." Crane stared at him. The gun trembled in his hand. "If you pull that trigger," Jesse continued, "your daughter loses her father to prison or a noose. Your son loses any chance at redemption, and you lose any hope of being remembered as anything but a murderer. I'm already going to lose everything. Maybe, maybe not." Jesse took a step forward. "Put the gun down, Mr. Crane. Face what you've done like a man. Your daughter's still alive. Your son still loves you. There's still time to choose a different path." The silence stretched on for an eternity. Then slowly, Crane lowered the gun. Sheriff Henderson moved forward and took the weapon from his hand. Crane didn't resist. He just stood there looking at his son with an expression of infinite sorrow. "I'm sorry, Billy. I'm so sorry." Billy didn't respond. He just turned away, tears streaming down his face. They took Crane away in handcuffs. The crowd dispersed slowly, everyone talking at once, trying to process what they'd witnessed. Clara stood in the middle of the chaos, feeling strangely empty. They'd won. They'd actually won. But victory felt hollow somehow. Jesse found her outside the church, staring at nothing. "You okay?" "I don't know." Clara shook her head. "I wanted to beat him. I wanted to prove he was wrong. But watching him fall apart like that, watching his son testify against him..." She trailed off. "He made his choices, Clara. Every step of the way he chose to hurt people instead of asking for help. That ain't on you." "I know. She paused. "I keep thinking about Emily. That girl's gonna lose her father and probably her life, and none of it's her fault." Jesse was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Maybe there's something we can do about that." Clara looked at him. "What do you mean?" "The railroad's still coming. Our land's still valuable. If we sell some of it, the East pasture, maybe we could make enough money to help with Emily's treatment." "Jesse, it's the right thing to do." He met her eyes. "I spent 15 years running from the right thing. I'm done running." Clara stared at him. This man who'd arrived with nothing but the clothes on his back and a willingness to work. This man who'd fought for her, bled for her, loved her despite everything. "You're a good man, Jesse Callahan." "I'm trying to be." She kissed him right there in front of the whole town and didn't care who saw. They had a ranch to save and a future to build. Together. The days following Crane's arrest moved faster than Clara expected. Sheriff Henderson, eager to redeem himself, worked overtime to document every crime Crane had committed. The dam was torn down within a week, and water flowed freely through Clara's land for the first time in months. The county health officials who'd taken bribes quietly resigned. The railroad investors from Austin sent representatives to apologize and negotiate fair prices for land easements. But Clara's thoughts kept returning to Emily Crane. She found herself riding past the Crane Ranch 3 days after the town meeting, not sure why she was there or what she intended to do. The place looked abandoned. Most of the ranch hands had scattered after their employer's arrest, and the main house stood silent and still. Clara was about to turn back when she saw movement on the porch. A young woman sat in a rocking chair wrapped in blankets despite the summer heat. She was thin, painfully thin, with dark hair and pale skin that seemed almost translucent. When she looked up and saw Clara approaching, her eyes went wide. "Mrs. Ward." Clara dismounted and walked slowly toward the porch. "You must be Emily." "I am." Emily's voice was weak but steady. "I didn't expect you to come here, not after everything my father did." "Neither did I." Clara stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. "How are you feeling?" Emily laughed, a bitter sound that turned into a cough. "Dying, Mrs. Ward. That's how I'm feeling." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It's not your fault." Emily pulled the blankets tighter around her shoulders. "Billy told me what happened at the meeting. He said you could have destroyed our family completely, but you didn't. He said your husband talked my father down when he had a gun in his hand." "Jesse's a good man." "He must be." Emily studied Clara with those two bright eyes. "Why are you here, Mrs. Ward? To gloat, to see what your enemy's daughter looks like?" "No." Clara climbed the porch steps and sat down in the chair beside Emily. "I came because I wanted to meet the girl who convinced her brother to do the right thing. The girl who told him she'd rather die poor and honest than live as a monster's daughter." Emily's expression softened. "Billy told you that?" "He did, and I've been thinking about it ever since." "Thinking about what?" Clara took a deep breath. "The railroad's coming through my land. The East pasture, specifically the one your father burned. When the announcement comes that land will be worth a fortune." "I know. That's why he wanted it so badly." "I'm going to sell part of it." Clara met Emily's eyes. "And I want to use some of the money to pay for your treatment in Philadelphia." Emily stared at her. "You can't be serious." "I am." "But my father tried to destroy you. He burned your land, killed your horses, threatened your life." "Your father did those things, not you." Clara reached out and took the girl's hand. It felt fragile as bird bones. You told your brother to do the right thing, even though it meant betraying your own father. You chose honor over survival. That's worth something, Emily. That's worth everything. Tears spilled down Emily's cheeks. I don't understand. Why would you help me? Because someone helped me when I had nothing. Clara thought about Jesse arriving at the train station in rags, choosing to stay and fight for a stranger's dream. Because kindness doesn't mean anything if you only show it to people who deserve it. Real kindness is for everyone, even the daughter of your enemy. Emily broke down, completely sobbing into her hands. Clara held this girl she'd never met before today, and felt something shift inside her. Some old wound beginning to heal. When Emily finally calmed, she looked up at Clara with red-rimmed eyes. I don't know how to thank you. Get better, that's thanks enough. Clara stood. I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers. You should be able to leave for Philadelphia within the month. Mrs. Ward. Clara turned at the porch steps. My father isn't a monster, not really. Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. He was just scared. Scared of losing me. Scared of being powerless. Scared of watching his daughter die, while he couldn't do anything to stop it. I know. Does that make it better? Clara thought about that. No, but it makes it human. She rode home with a lighter heart than she'd had in weeks. Jesse was waiting for her when she arrived, his expression curious. You were gone a long time. Everything okay? Better than okay. Clara dismounted and walked into his arms. I did something today. Something I'm not sure you'll understand. She told him about Emily, about her offer, about the conversation on the porch. Jesse listened without interrupting, his face unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. That's a lot of money, Clara. Money we could use to rebuild the ranch, to pay off the bank, to... I know. The railroad payment won't cover everything. If we give part of it to Emily's treatment, we'll be tight for years. I know that too. Jesse studied her face. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. Clara met his eyes. Because I spent 2 years being so focused on survival that I forgot what I was surviving for. Because Thomas would have done the same thing, and I want to be the woman he believed I was. Jesse's expression shifted. The doubt faded, replaced by something softer. You already are that woman, Clara. You always were. He kissed her forehead, then pulled back with that almost smile she'd come to love. Besides, he said, we don't need a fortune to build a life. We just need each other. The railroad announcement came 3 weeks later. Just as Billy had predicted, the route would pass directly through Clara's east pasture. Land that had been worth maybe $50 an acre was suddenly valued at $200. The railroad company offered Clara $15,000 for the easement rights, more money than she'd ever imagined having. She accepted $5,000 and used the rest to negotiate better terms for her neighbors, the small ranchers who would have been overwhelmed by railroad lawyers and legal jargon. It wasn't charity, it was community. The same community that had rallied around her when she needed help. You could have kept it all, Martha Jenkins told her at the signing ceremony. Nobody would have blamed you. I would have blamed me. Clara signed her name with a flourish. Thomas always said a rising tide lifts all boats. Time to prove him right. The money changed everything. Clara paid off the bank loan with enough left over to rebuild the east pasture and repair everything that had been neglected for 2 years. She bought new breeding stock, hired 2 ranch hands to help with the work, and finally stopped feeling like she was drowning. But the biggest change was harder to measure. People who had shunned her for months suddenly wanted to be her friend. Merchants who had refused her credit now offered discounts. The same townspeople who had whispered about her desperate mail-order marriage now talked about her courage, her resilience, her inspiring love story. Clara found it all vaguely ridiculous. They're acting like we're heroes, she told Jesse one evening. Like we did something special. We survived. That's special enough. We almost didn't. Almost only counts in horseshoes. Jesse pulled her close. The point is, we're here. We're together. And we're not going anywhere. Clara leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. I never thanked you properly, you know. For what? For answering my letter, for coming all this way, for staying when any sane man would have run. Jesse laughed, a low rumble in his chest. I think we established I'm not particularly sane. I'm serious. Clara pulled back to look at him. You had nothing when you got here. No money, no prospects, no reason to believe I was worth fighting for. But you stayed. You fought. You almost died for this ranch for me. I'd do it again. I know. That's what scares me. Jesse's expression softened. Clara, when I got on that train in Denver, I was ready to die. Not in some dramatic way, just slowly, piece by piece drifting, until there was nothing left. I'd given up on finding anything worth living for. He touched her face, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. Then I read your letter, and something woke up inside me. Some part that I thought was dead. You gave me hope, Clara. You gave me a reason to fight. So don't thank me for staying. Thank yourself for writing those words. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. We saved each other. We did. She kissed him then long and deep, and for a moment, the whole world fell away. 2 months later, Clara received a letter from Philadelphia. The handwriting was shaky, but clear. She read it 3 times before showing it to Jesse. Mrs. Ward. The doctors say I'm responding to treatment. They can't promise anything, but for the first time in a year they're using words like hope and possibility. My father writes to me from prison. He says he's proud of me, proud of Billy, ashamed of what he became. I don't know if I can forgive him yet, but I'm trying. Billy came to visit last week. He's working at a ranch outside Austin now, starting over. He told me about the good things you've done for the community, how you've used the railroad money to help others. He said you're the kind of person he wants to be when he grows up. I think he's right. Thank you, Mrs. Ward. Thank you for seeing something worth saving in a dying girl whose father tried to destroy you. Thank you for teaching me that kindness doesn't have to make sense to be real. I don't know if I'll live or die. But because of you, I'm going to find out fighting. With all my gratitude, Emily Crane. Clara set down the letter and wiped her eyes. She's gonna make it, Jesse said quietly. I can feel it. You don't know that. No, but I believe it. He squeezed her hand. Sometimes believing is enough. Fall arrived, cooling the brutal Texas heat and painting the land in shades of gold and amber. The ranch had never looked better. The horses were healthy, the fences were strong, and the creek ran clear and full. On a cool October evening, Clara and Jesse sat on the porch watching the sun set over their land. I was thinking, Jesse said. About what? About the future. He shifted in his chair. About what happens next. Clara felt a flutter of anxiety. What do you mean? I mean, we've been so focused on surviving, we never talked about living. Jesse turned to face her. What do you want, Clara? Not what you need, not what the ranch needs. What do you want? She thought about it. Really thought about it for the first time in years. I want this, she said finally. This porch, this land, this life. I want to raise horses with you, grow old with you, build something that lasts. And Clara hesitated. And I want a family. Children, if you want that too. Jesse's face broke into the first full smile she'd ever seen from him. It transformed his weathered features, made him look younger, somehow lighter. I want that more than anything. Really. Clara, I spent 15 years believing I didn't deserve a family, that I was too damaged, too broken, too lost. But you showed me different. You showed me that it's never too late to build something good. He took her hand, his grip strong and warm. I want to have children with you. I want to teach them to ride horses and mend fences and stand up for what's right. I want to watch them grow up on this land that we fought for, knowing that they'll never have to fight the way we did. Clara felt tears streaming down her face. Happy tears, the happiest she'd ever cried. "Then let's do it," she whispered. "Let's build that life." Jesse pulled her into his arms and held her tight. "I love you, Clara Holbrook Ward." "I love you too, Jesse Callahan." They stayed on the porch until the stars came out. Two people who had found each other against impossible odds, making plans for a future they'd earned with blood and sweat and stubborn hope. The next spring, Clara gave birth to a boy. They named him Thomas, after the husband who had built the ranch and the legacy that lived on in every fence post and horse pen. He had Clara's green eyes and Jesse's dark hair, and from the moment he drew his first breath, he was the center of their universe. Martha Jenkins came to visit the day after the birth, bringing flowers and food, and her own brand of no-nonsense wisdom. "He's beautiful," she said, peering at the baby in Clara's arms. "Got his daddy's chin." "Poor kid," Jesse muttered, and everyone laughed. Martha sat on the edge of the bed and took Clara's free hand. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For doubting you. When you sent that letter to Denver, I thought you'd lost your mind. I thought you were setting yourself up for disaster. To be fair, it was a crazy plan." "It was." Martha smiled. "But sometimes crazy is exactly what's needed. You took a chance on a stranger, and look what you built. A family, a home, a life worth living." Clara looked at Jesse standing by the window with the sunlight catching the silver in his hair. Then at Thomas sleeping peacefully in her arms. Then around the room she'd shared with Thomas Holbrook, where so much pain and joy and love had unfolded. "I didn't build this alone," she said. "I had help. We all need help sometimes." Martha squeezed her hand. "The trick is being brave enough to ask for it." That evening, after everyone had gone and the baby was sleeping, Clara and Jesse stood together at the window of their bedroom. "She's right, you know," Clara said. "About what? About asking for help. That letter I wrote, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. Admitting I couldn't do it alone, opening myself up to rejection and judgment and failure. I almost burned it a dozen times." "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." Clara leaned against his shoulder. "Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't sent it. If I'd been too proud or too scared. You'd have lost the ranch. I'd have lost everything. The land, the horses, any chance at happiness." She looked up at him. "I'd have lost you." Jesse kissed the top of her head. "You'll never lose me. Not now, not ever. I made you a promise, Clara. I intend to keep it for the rest of my life. Even when I'm old and gray and can't ride anymore. Especially then." Clara smiled and turned back to the window. Outside, the ranch stretched out before them, peaceful and prosperous under the spring sky. The horses grazed in the east pasture where new grass had finally covered the scars from the fire. The creek sparkled in the fading light, full and free-flowing since the dam came down. And in the distance, she could see the railroad tracks that had changed their fortunes and their lives. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been simple. There had been moments when Clara had been certain they would fail, certain that all their fighting and sacrifice would amount to nothing. But they hadn't failed. They had survived together. "Jesse, yeah, thank you." "For what?" "For answering a desperate letter from a stranger. For stepping off that train in rags and never looking back. For teaching me that hope isn't a luxury, it's a choice we make every single day." Jesse was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You know what I thought the first time I saw you standing on that platform with your chin up and your eyes blazing, ready to fight the whole world if you had to? What? I thought, that's a woman worth fighting for." He pulled her close. "I was right." Clara closed her eyes and let herself feel it, the warmth of his arms, the steady beat of his heart, the peace of knowing she was exactly where she belonged. She had gambled everything on a stranger. and she had won more than she ever dreamed possible. Not just a ranch, not just a husband, a home. In her bedroom, baby Thomas stirred and cooed. Clara and Jesse looked at each other, the same thought in both their minds. "Your turn," Clara said. "It's always my turn," Jesse grumbled, but he was smiling as he walked to the cradle. Clara watched him lift their son, cradling the baby against his chest, with a tenderness that still surprised her. This man who had arrived with nothing, who had been willing to work until his hands bled for a chance at belonging. This man who had become her partner, her lover, her best friend, her family. "I love you," she said. Jesse looked up their son in his arms and smiled. "I know." And in that moment, Clara Holbrook Ward understood something she'd been struggling to believe for 2 long years. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. Some stories end with wealth and glory. Some end with revenge fulfilled or enemies defeated. But the best stories, the ones that stay with you long after the last page turns, end with something simpler. They end with love that was earned, with family that was chosen, with hope that was fought for every single day. Clara Holbrook Ward had written a desperate letter to a stranger asking for a husband she didn't love to save a ranch she couldn't run alone. She found something better. She found a home.